Okay, so going back a few years, a digital marketing strategy pretty much consisted of having a website, and it was really as simple as that. And phase 2 was really about, well, how do we then drive traffic to this website? And the predominant way of doing that is through Google. So any of you who run websites and look at analytics will know that your biggest referrer is typically Google. It might be 30% of your traffic comes through people searching for information related to your products and services. So phase 2 was about how to drive traffic, mainly through that one channel of search to your website, and also through obviously paid media as well. You know, now as the web becomes more fragmented and consumers take control of it, and they do more and more different things online and use the internet for more to play more different roles, this is kind of more what a digital marketing strategy looks like in terms of, you know, considering websites, intranets, extranets, the various different forms of paid advertising that you can do online, different forms of sort of email marketing and casting your information out to the web, mobile, and obviously social media. And you know, we see this kind of digital ecosystem continuing to kind of split and divide and extend as you know, as new generations kind of come through and adopt the internet for their own purposes that are important to them. And the shift that's going on with with marketing as a whole, not just digital marketing, is really well summarised by Brian Featherstoner, who's the CEO of Ogilvy One Worldwide. And he talks about the shift from the 4 Ps that we all know about to the 4 Es. So moving from the idea of defining your product to defining the overall experience that your brand provides to its customers, from the idea of defining the place in which you position your brand and your product to being everywhere at once, because that's where your customers are. From price to exchange, and from promotion to evangelism. So that's just a really nice, in 4 lines, kind of summary of how marketing as a whole is evolving. And of course, all of these ideas aren't just reserved for digital marketing. You know, businesses can be social and always have been social long before the internet came along. So coming down specifically to social media, it's obviously a hot topic at the moment. It's a big buzzword. If you do a search in Google for social media, you'll find 200 million results. So there's a lot of content out there about social media. I read all of it last night. It's fascinating. And last week, there were 45,000 news articles created with the word social media in them, just last week alone. So this is something that's being discussed to the death, and particularly within our business. So, you know, is this really just a fad that's going to sort of die and go away, or does this really represent a permanent shift in terms of companies being required to be more social from here on in? And I went to a speech a couple of months ago from a child psychologist, because I've got a very precocious 4-year-old, and I thought it would be interesting. And this child psychologist showed this slide, which is basically, it's based upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it just talks about the fact that once survival and sort of safety is established, children need these 2 branches of belonging and autonomy to help build their self-esteem. And in different cases, different children have a, you know, one of those branches will be stronger than the other. So my son Leo is definitely all about autonomy and being the boss. But you know, when you look at this diagram, you know, belonging is about connectedness and empathy and acceptance, and that's kind of fun stuff. And autonomy is about mastery and choice, and that's about self-fulfillment. And these 2 things lead to self-esteem. And it really struck me when I saw this that this is basically the role that social media plays for all of the millions of people that use it. You know, they get to connect with other people and have fun while they do it. And also they get to be the hero around a particular topic that's of interest to them. And people come and read their content, and they have a very powerful voice. So I thought that was a really interesting thing when I saw it. So consumers are spending increasing time connecting online. Facebook announced last week that it had reached the 250 million user point, which if it was a country, it would make it the 4th largest country in the world, ahead of Indonesia. So, you know, Facebook hasn't been around for a very long time, and that's pretty staggering growth. You know, Twitter, I think, is at about 30 million users in 2 years, and their goal, through some documents that were found that were, I suppose, leaked a couple of weeks ago, showed that their goal is to reach 1 billion users, and basically to be the pulse of the planet within the next 5 years. And their business model is to monetize their business so that if every one of their 1 billion users, they can extract $1 of value from somebody per year, that's all they need to do. So it's this is a sort of the scale that these web businesses have that allows them to offer incredible value for a very low cost to somebody, whether it be the advertiser or the users themselves. So companies can benefit from being a more social business and also from tapping into some of the tactics that you can employ using social networking and social media tools, and that's what some of the other guys that are here today are going to talk about. But 75% of Fortune 100 companies plan to undertake some sort of social media initiative in the next few years. And there's no question that some of those will fail, but obviously the ones that basically don't attempt to do this properly will fail because, again, as we've seen with Dell, their customers will sort of force them to become more social anyway. A report that came out just last week from Altimeter Group showed a direct link between engagement in social media and the bottom line. And this report looked at the top 100 brands globally, and it sorted them into 4 categories. So the top category were the mavens, who had a high social media presence and also a high level of ongoing engagement. And they rated them down to the bottom category, who are the wallflowers, who have a low presence and low engagement. And the result, and then they looked at their financial performance. And what was really interesting is just how linear these graphs are. So the one on the left is revenue growth. So the mavens enjoyed 18% revenue growth on average in the last 12 months. The wallflowers on average went backwards by 6%. And the same sort of trend applied to their gross margins and net margin growth as well. So there's a direct link there between companies that are heavily engaged in social media and their financial performance. Now, there could be a number of factors behind that. These could be new emerging companies that are in a high growth phase that are more geared to the current, the evolving sort of business landscape like Google. It might be that their leadership is much more in tune with their customers, which would suggest that they're more open to social media and they're also more connected to their customers, so they're performing well. There could be a whole lot of reasons, but it's a very interesting link between those two things. So look, just to summarise for me, this is really about a permanent structural shift in society that's actually going to accelerate, not change. When I think about, again, my 4-year-old son Leo and how he's going to engage with companies, it's going to be in a much more open, transparent way, and he's going to be using the crowd to kind of help him decide which companies he buys products from. And it's going to be very hard to compete if you don't have a good product or service because you're going to get found out. So there's a new democracy going on and power shifting, and there's implications for corporates in terms of values, the way they evolve their products and get feedback from their customers, and also with regards to marketing and communication. There are rewards for companies that engage in social media. It does require a thought out and sound strategy and a change in behaviour in every part of the business, not just marketing but operations, and a real commitment from leadership as well, because again, this is, in some ways, this whole movement is a little bit anti-marketing. It's basically let us under the hood and talk to the people who are really driving the business so that we can make our judgments based upon those things. So it needs a sort of a whole of business approach to it. And back to the start of the presentation, here's another great quote from David Ogilvy, who was going through a similar sort of change when Ogilvy was born with the invention of television. So, and he said it very well, that change is our lifeblood and stagnation our death bell. And I think that the main thing is that as businesses, we all just keep moving quickly and we start the journey. We're prepared to sort of test and learn and make a few mistakes. And clearly the companies that sort of have, take the first mover position in this space will be benefiting from it 5 years from now. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand back to Michael to introduce.